You're listening to the Visionary Lifestyle Podcast, the show that's dedicated to raising consciousness and empowering you to activate your highest potential. I'm your host, Magda Freedom Rod. Our guest today is Sadhviji. Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswatiji was raised in an American family in Hollywood, California, and graduated from Stanford University. She was completing her Ph.D. in psychology when she left America in 1996 to come and live permanently at Parmarth Niketan Ashram in Rishikesh, India. She's been living there for the last 20 years, engaged in spiritual practice and dedicated service. She has a really interesting story of how India claimed her as its own, and I urge you to check out the video that's linked in the show notes where she explains it. She was officially initiated into the order of Sanyas in the year 2000 by her guru and the spiritual head of Parmarth Niketan Ashram, His Holiness Swami Chidanand Saraswatiji. Sadhvi is a renowned speaker who gives keynote addresses at large forums on a wide variety of topics ranging from conscious business to science and spirituality to sustainable development to the keys of happiness and peace in life to all aspects of yoga. She's been a speaker at the United Nations, Parliament of World Religions, and many international conferences and summits. Her talks blend the knowledge and logic of the West with the insights, spirituality, and wisdom of the East, and she's renowned as a spiritual bridge between the two cultures. At Parmarth Niketan Rishikesh, where she lives most of the year, she gives spiritual discourses and daily satsang, teaches meditation, provides counseling, and oversees a myriad of charitable and humanitarian projects and activities. She's the Secretary General of the Global Interfaith WASH Alliance, an international interfaith organization dedicated to bringing clean water, sanitation, and hygiene to children of the world. She's the president of the Divine Shakti Foundation, a foundation dedicated to bringing education and empowerment to women and children who run free schools, vocational training programs, and empowerment programs. She's also the director of the annual world-famous International Yoga Festival at Parmarth. She has a Ph.D. in psychology, and she was also the managing editor for the monumental project of the 11-volume Encyclopedia of Hinduism. Sadhvi and I did this interview deep in the heart of the Parmarth Niketan Ashram in Rishikesh, which serves as the home of the International Yoga Festival and is where I stayed for about 5 weeks over the course of the festival doing interviews for the podcast. Something you need to know about this interview and Sadhviji is that she has such a calm and warm presence. And as I was re-listening to this interview to edit it for you, I was wishing I had this on video because I remembered how she had such a lovely smile on her face the whole time. She smiles with her eyes, you know what I mean? She has a really authentic presence. You heard her bio. She's a real activist and doing so much sacred service in the world with all the projects she's running, and I'm truly honored I got so much of her time. I sat in her satsangs many nights while I was at the Parmarth Niketan Ashram, and every time she managed to bring me so deeply into my heart that I literally shed tears. She has a way of speaking truth in a very practical way that anyone can understand. I encourage you to check out the Parmarth YouTube channel and even tune into the Facebook Live videos of her leading satsangs to learn even more from her. There are links in the show notes for you. So in this interview, we talk about the 8 limbs of yoga, the International Yoga Festival, the meaning of Shakti, being of service, conscious eating, the dairy industry, the plight of the cows in India, meditation, and even more. We packed a lot into this episode. I really hope you enjoy spending this time with Sadhviji as much as I did. And make sure you make it to the end to hear her wish for the world. It's a great one. To follow her and learn more about her work in the world, make sure to check out the show notes for all the links. And now, on with the show. Sadhviji, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
I'm so grateful that you've made the time in your super busy schedule to spend this time with us. I'm really grateful. I love that you're known as the spiritual bridge. between the East and the West. It seems like a perfect role for you. I've read a bit about your background and how you ended up here and your moment in the Ganga, and I wanted to ask you about that, but I know we're limited on time, so what I'm going to do in the show notes is link people to a YouTube video that I've seen of you talking about this. So it was quite an unexpected moment for you coming to India, but we'll leave that for the YouTube video. Let's jump right into some other questions, if that's okay. I'd love to start with yoga. It was the International Yoga Festival that drew me here to Rishikesh. You are the director of the International Yoga Festival. How many years is this one now?
Well, the festival actually has a really interesting history that you have to look at when you talk about how many years it's been going on. This is the 29th year of the festival. It is not the 29th year that we have been hosting it. It was begun originally by the Uttar Pradesh Tourism Department, and they held it at a hotel. And for several years, they actually had BKS Iyengar come. I mean, this was in years before I even was in India. And then after he stopped coming, that was early 90s, after he stopped coming, it got smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And in 1999, they asked us whether they could use Parmarth as their venue, that they still would have people stay in a hotel, but could they use us as the venue? We said, sure. That year, I think there were maybe 17 people or 20 people or something. Oh. The next year, they offered an ashram package, so people had a choice of whether to stay in the hotel or to stay in the ashram. Everyone chose the ashram package. Mm-hmm. But again, it was really small, and we had no role at all in organizing. We were just the venue. In early 2001, I don't remember exactly the month, but sometime between the festival of 2000 and the festival of 2001, actually I think it was end of 2000, the state of Uttarakhand was formed. So out of Uttar Pradesh, this mountainous area essentially seceded from this huge state of Uttar Pradesh. And we went to the brand newly formed government of Uttarakhand and said, it was Uttaranchal at the time actually, and we said, look, we've been doing this for the last couple of years with UP Tourism. It's a great program. We realize you are so busy right now trying to form a brand new government. We're happy to organize it, but we'd love to do it in partnership with you the same way that we did it in partnership with UP Tourism. Mm-hmm. They said, sure. So we started organizing it and just called them for the inaugural event and the concluding event. And slowly, once their government got actually set and in place, they got really enthusiastic about it. And we've been running it with them since then. And this year, for the first time, we're actually now doing it in partnership as well with the Ayush Ministry of the Government of India, the central government. So it's now not just us and the state government, but it's us, state government, and central government.
That's exciting.
It is very exciting.
So it's now like a national festival.
It is, and what's for me really exciting is, and the reason that this was able to happen, I think, is that the central government of India now has a ministry dedicated to Ayush, which stands for Ayurveda, Yoga, Unani, which is another form of natural health care, naturopathy, right, S is Siddhi. Mm-hmm. So it's Ayurveda, Yoga, Unani, Siddhi medicine, and homeopathy.
Wow.
So it's all of your natural, indigenous forms of healing.
Yeah, holistic self-care and healing.
Yeah. So there's actually a whole central government ministry of this, which I don't know that much from an international political science standpoint, but I would guess that India is the only country to actually have a ministry of that.
Another reason to love India.
Yes.
Yes, I resonate so much with the energy here because they get this stuff. That's a big part of it. So in your view, what's the value of yoga for the individual and for the collective, for the world?
The value is enormous. I'm trying to figure out a way to articulate it specifically. It's almost like saying, what exactly is the value of breathing? Or what exactly is the value of love? Or, one of these huge all-encompassing things that impacts and affects and informs every aspect of us. Because of course, yoga is not just what we do on a yoga mat.
Thank you.
So if you say, what is the benefit of asanas, we can certainly talk about physical health. We can even talk about emotional and psychological health. We could even talk about spiritual health, because certainly on a mat, one can close one's eyes and meditate. But
well, let me switch it for you.
Sure.
How do you define yoga? What's your personal definition of yoga?
Well, I try not to redefine things that the sages and saints and rishis have already really done. Here in my take, here's what it is. No, this is something that the sages have already told us, which is it's union.
Right.
And we tend to think of it as union of my nose to my knees, or union of my fingertips to my toes. But it's union of the self to the divine. And this is where, when you said, what is the benefit of yoga? And I said it's so hard to contain that, because Patanjali gave us 8 limbs of yoga that take you from how you live in the world. How do you interact? Not with your soul, not with your spirit, but with your fellow beings.
Right.
All the way from that, so non-violently, truthfully, without stealing, without hoarding. We begin on the most basic, fundamental level, and it takes you all the way up into samadhi. So slowly, as you go through the limbs, you get more and more inward. But none of them is more important. They may be a progression. They also can happen simultaneously. One can certainly experience samadhi, practicing any of the yamas or niyamas. You could certainly experience samadhi in asana.
Right.
I had the wonderful blessing of actually watching B.K.S. Iyengar practice. And this was a man who experienced samadhi in asana.
Wow.
So, he'd come out of a 45-minute headstand that all of his students had long since collapsed out of, sweating and panting. And his eyes looked like he just got off his meditation cushion.
Wow.
So they move sequentially, although they certainly can happen simultaneously. But no one ever said one is more important than the other. So you're not moving through importance. And in fact, the bottom is your foundation. Right. And what we know about anything in the world, from a house to a building to a tree, if your roots or your foundation are not strong, the tiniest little storm comes, your building collapses, your house collapses, your tree falls over. And so the roots of yoga are these yamas and niyamas: nonviolence, truthfulness. So when you say, how does it help the world? Well, if we all, even if we could never touch our nose to our knees, even if we never could touch our fingers to our toes, even if we never experienced samadhi, if we simply practiced the first 3 of the yamas, nonviolence, truthfulness, non-stealing, if that was all we did of yoga,
right,
the world would be an entirely different place.
Yes.
On a personal level, though, that would shift my life as well. Mm-hmm. It would shift how I was in the world. It would shift my relationships. But then I've got this wonderful opportunity, an invitation to go through them into asana, into how do I embody my body, use it as a medium for my awakening rather than ignoring my body. Mm-hmm. It's not about moving beyond the body, it's moving through the body. Mm-hmm. And then moving through my breath and through my awareness, ultimately into meditation and samadhi. So I really feel like yoga is not just a benefit, but really the ground, the field, the path without beginning or ending, without any borders or boundaries anywhere on it, upon which a meaningful, positive, beneficial life, both individually as well as collectively, can live.
Beautifully said. Beautifully said. So this festival will be teaching about all 8 limbs of yoga and many different styles of yoga as well, correct?
We actually always say that our goal is to offer the first 7 limbs. You can't really have a class in samadhi. I'm fully aware that there are plenty of people who would be happy to take your money and say, you know, here's a class in samadhi, here's a 1, 2, 3, go. But what we realize is that that's really something that happens by grace. Mm. It's not about 1, 2, 3, go. It's not about sit in that asana or do this breath or do this technique. Because that connection with God is just as varied from person to person as all of the reflections of the rays of the sun are in the different vessels that are reflecting the light. So you can't teach samadhi. What you can do is lay the groundwork for it.
Right.
And then just have faith and know that here on the banks of Ganga, that grace tends to happen. But we don't take credit for it. We don't say, oh yeah, we gave you samadhi.
Right.
We've provided classes and programs in the first 7 limbs, and then with Ganga's grace, the samadhi just happens.
Beautiful. And it's quite international. You have people from how many countries?
This year it's looking like we're actually going to have people from 100 countries. We are up to about 95, I think, on the last count.
That's so exciting.
And inevitably within the last few days, more countries trickle in. So yes, it would be really exciting if we hit 100, but it's pretty exciting to hit 95 anyway.
I think about all the seeds that are going to be planted here during this festival and then taken out around the world, literally, by all the people that attend. It's incredible.
For me, the most exciting part, actually, is to see the way that people open and expand. So many of them, I think, come subconsciously thinking that they're just coming for asanas, or maybe that's what their conscious mind tells them. But on an unconscious level, they're being drawn, they're being pulled, they're being brought for something that is so much higher. And to see people who think they were just coming because they love one of the teachers, or they've always wanted to study from this one, or they've always wanted to learn that style. Mm-hmm. And they come, and yeah, they get that, but they get so much more.
Right.
And to just watch that on people's faces of, yeah, this, and oh my God, so much more.
Oh, it's so exciting. I'm so glad I'm going to be here to be a part of it. All right, moving on to the next question. I wanted to drop into Shakti. So you run the Divine Shakti Foundation. That's one of your babies here, right? So for our listeners that aren't familiar with Shakti, can you explain what Shakti is?
Shakti is the feminine energy through which everything happens. So without going into a long theological discussion about the manifestations of the divine, in the Indian and Hindu tradition, each of the aspects of the divine, so the creative aspect, Brahma, the aspect that sustains and maintains, Vishnu, and therefore through Vishnu's incarnations, Ram, Krishna, when people worship, well, Vishnu has to incarnate on earth because in order to sustain life, in order to sustain Dharma, he incarnates on earth. The disillusion, we say destruction, but I don't like that term because it feels so negative. It's much more a dissolving of the old to create space for that which is new. So those three aspects, which are cyclical, not linear. Right. We don't begin with creation and end with destruction. It's a cycle.
Right.
So the power of Shiva to destroy or dissolve is the power that creates space into which the power of Brahma creates. But I mention this because each of these aspects has a feminine form. And the reason for that is that without that Shakti, that feminine energy, the power of creation, the power of sustenance, the power of destruction or dissolution couldn't happen. So that's what Shakti is. It is used colloquially, particularly, you asked about the foundation, to refer to women and girls. And so the foundation is a foundation dedicated to women and children, not only girls, but with a focus on girls. So we run a lot of schools, but the schools are co-ed, so we're not exclusively girls, but we do have an emphasis on ensuring that girls are going to school. So we run free schools, we run vocational training programs, upliftment, empowerment programs for women and girls. And it's been such a great joy. We run medical care programs here and in villages. We've got an ambulance and a team that goes into the villages every week for medical care. But it's more than that. You know, they teach yoga, they teach how to actually take care of yourself. They teach a lot about water, sanitation, and hygiene. So it's not just going into the villages with pills and shots, but actually empowering them with the skills and the knowledge and the wisdom. Yeah, beautiful. And we're now also beginning to run self-help groups for women and getting them building toilets, and so the work is just ever growing and ever expanding. Right, there's plenty of work to do. Yes. For sure. What are your thoughts in terms of Shakti? On the Dalai Lama's quote about the Western woman being the one that will save the world. I don't pretend to be clairvoyant. I've got phenomenal faith in His Holiness the Dalai Lama and deep love for him. So I have no reason to doubt that. Looking at it in terms of the female, before we look at the Western aspect, it certainly makes sense to me. I think women intuitively find the concept of our interconnectedness much more self-evident and obvious and part of our minute-to-minute, moment-to-moment experience than men do. And of course, that's a gross generalization, but there it is. And of course, it's not only actual women in female bodies, that feminine energy. It's not that men don't have Shakti. There's actually, yes, there's a connection, of course, between the energy and the form, but it's not exclusive. And so the Shakti energy can absolutely be in a male form. It just has to be a male form who is connected to that and who isn't so indoctrinated into the misconception about what it means to be masculine or what it means to be a man, as so many in our society are today, sadly. So I think that women in particular, and men who are connected to the divine feminine within themselves, have to be the ones who are going to save the world, because we cannot save it from an experience of separateness. Again, in our realm of gross generalizations, men tend to think much more with the thinking mind, to intellectualize things, which is great in so many ways, but the dilemma with that is that when the mind thinks about something, it separates me from it. That's what the mind does. It's how it figures out a math problem, is it's able to step out of the problem, look at it, understand which equation should be used, and solve it. Women tend to be much more in it and losing the sense of separation. Much more in the heart, in the intuition, in the feeling. And that's an experience that connects us. And so if we're going to be saved, we've got to be saved by one who is living with an experience of us being connected rather than separate, and with an experience of us as spirit, as the same spirit that runs through us, rather than seeing people as objects. See, if I'm thinking about you the same way that I'm thinking about this cup of tea or about a math problem, then you're an object. And there's really only two ways to think about an object. Either it's something I can use to get ahead, so you are of some use to me, or you're a hurdle on my path, so I have to remove you. And the way that I use you could be any one of 1,000 different options, but it's all objectifying. This is what lust is. Lust isn't only sexual. Lust is if I'm seeing you as an object to be used. It's lust. And so that's not a way to save us. That's a way that just sends us deeper and deeper and deeper into a spiral of separation and objectification. And that's where I start to feel like, well, it's okay for me to hoard. It's okay for me to make choices that deprive you, because look, we're separate. It's the us and them. It's what enabled things like apartheid or slavery to take place, because, well, I mean, if they're not us, who's to say that we can't use them? They're objects. And whether it's people of different colors, whether it's women, whether it's nature, whether it's animals, whatever it is we're objectifying and using, we're destroying it. And we're destroying the oneness of creation. So I agree that it's going to have to be someone deeply connected to that feminine energy, whether in a female form or in a male form, but that feminine energy, that divine feminine energy. The Western woman, I don't know. I love that he said it.
I mean, I figure it has something to do with the privilege of the Western woman, right? I mean, we have a privileged life in the West as compared to many people in the world.
Yeah, we get to be miserable by choice instead of by circumstance.
Oh, ouch. Wow, that was a good nugget.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, if you look at it.
No, you're right.
You live in a place like India and you see people standing on the side of the road, chopping big rocks into medium-sized rocks, into little rocks that they're going to be used to pave the road all day long in the sun on the side of the road. And you think, yeah, that's a miserable life. And yet when you talk to them, they're not miserable. And then the sheer number of people, or percentage of people even, that I know abroad for whom there isn't anything that is actually wrong on any sort of objective level of access to the things that one would think one needed to be happy. I've got a roof over my head, there's food, I've got an education, I've got a car, I've got opportunity, I've got, friends, look, I've been out at the nightclub every night, look, we're sitting in Starbucks every afternoon, and I'm not sick. We run these free medical camps, and these people come and they're so sick. And yet, their eyes are shining. And so many people in the West, I know, they've got everything. They're not sick, at least with any disease that a blood test or an X-ray or an MRI is going to show. And yet there's a pervasive sense of dis-ease.
Right. And this is a conversation, as we've been chatting off of this interview, this keeps circling around about the idea of India, how it's somewhat chaotic, could be described as chaotic on the outside. However, the culture here, many of the people seem to have this peace inside.
Yes.
Whereas the West is the opposite of that. So I'd love to move into conscious eating a little bit. Conscious eating is a huge topic. I've come to believe that it's my dharma to learn as much as I can about it, teach as much as I can about it, really raising awareness for people to help them connect the dots. I teach conscious eating as a way to express love, essentially, self-love, animal love, and planet love, because our food choices do affect each of these realms, much more, I find, than people realize. So I know that food has been a topic that has been important to you as well, that you teach about vegetarianism, right? And I'd love to hear why you believe that vegetarianism is important, but knowing that we have limited time, the most important question I feel like I really want to get your perspective on is why Hinduism and India in general tends to be more vegetarian than vegan. So we're still consuming dairy. We talk about the first limb is nonviolence, ahimsa, which is doing no harm, and the dairy industry being fraught with so much suffering, certainly in the West. I'm kind of exploring how much of that goes on in the East. It's less so certainly in the villages, but there is mass production of dairy in India as well, which I can only assume at this point without having done too much research on it, that there is quite a bit of suffering involved in that as well, for the environment, for the animals, obviously, and in my research also for the human body, consuming a lot of dairy. So I'd really love to get your perspective on this.
Sure. It's a great question. I was actually a vegan before I came to India. I'm a vegan when I'm outside of this ashram. First of all, I need to clarify that in India, vegetarianism includes not eating eggs. So it's only dairy.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
In India, eggs are not considered a vegetarian food. So in the West, the vegan-vegetarian distinction includes both dairy and eggs, right. Whereas in India, it is exclusively dairy. There is no vegetarian who eats eggs.
Okay.
Or they certainly wouldn't say, I'm a vegetarian.
Right, good to know.
They would understand, I eat eggs, therefore I'm not vegetarian.
I've noticed I haven't seen any eggs here. I was wondering about that.
You will not see eggs. You will not buy bread or cake that is cooked with eggs. It's absolutely a non-vegetarian food.
Okay.
And it is, if you go into a restaurant, for example, that sells vegetarian and non-vegetarian food, eggs are on the non-vegetarian menu.
So interesting. I didn't know that.
Dairy. I believe that shortly there will be a mass movement regarding this in India.
Wow.
And the reason that I say that is that the reason that milk is considered acceptable is because the cow is worshipped. And you have to remember that cultural and religious tenets have come to us from thousands and thousands of years. The evils of the dairy industry, particularly in India, are a decade old. It's brand new. In traditional India, people had cows, or there was a local dairy, and you got the milk. Now, first of all, they were not given hormones, they were not given antibiotics. I mean, that practice just didn't exist. The male babies were never sold off to become meat. I mean, in America, it's all, and you know, the dairy industry and the meat industry are pretty much one industry, because when the pregnant female cow gives birth, and she gives birth to a male, he becomes veal or beef, depending on who they're selling it to.
Right.
That doesn't happen here. That male cow gets given to farmers to work in a farm, or the male cow gets kept to impregnate the females, depending on how big scale of a dairy farm someone is running. But they are not taking the male and then selling him off to become beef.
Great.
And in this country, interestingly, even in places where they are non-vegetarian, it's not beef they're selling, it's sheep.
Oh, and
Mutton.
buffalo, right?
I don't know, mutton is what you see, mutton and chicken is what you see most of the time. Buffalo milk, I mean, I'm sure I'm a strict vegetarian, so I don't know the details of exactly what type of meat you could get where. But I know that even in most places that are not vegetarian, beef is not served. So the cow is really considered very, very sacred. So the babies are not killed. The mothers are not injected with stuff. They're not hooked up to chains and whatnot.
The babies aren't taken away from
babies
the
are
mothers?
not taken away. I mean, if you go into our goshala, our cow home, the babies live with their moms.
Yeah.
And the babies milk first. Mm-hmm. Our cows are milked twice a day. Babies milk first. Then the guy comes in and he milks it, and the evening, by hand, and in the evening the baby drinks, and the guy comes and he squeezes it after that. But even, I think, on bigger scale places, it's mostly still done like that. Until you get to the really big scale, commercial, massive, not caring about the cow dairies. Industrial scale dairies, which is brand new in India. Brand new on that level.
Okay.
So, and this is why I think that this is something that's going to actually become an issue in India. I don't think most people know. I won't drink milk outside of this ashram. I will not drink milk in places like Delhi or anywhere. There are some people we know who happen to have cows, so of course at their house I'll drink milk. But otherwise, I won't drink it. And people are amazed, but the minute I explain why, what I get is, oh my God, no, not here. No, people don't treat cows like that. No, it can't be. It's going to take a while for Indian consciousness to really wrap its head around how the cows are being treated whose milk is coming to them in the bags or the boxes that they're drinking. And again, I think that the industrial type of dairy is still a small percentage here. I have no idea what percentage it would be, but I do not think it is the majority.
Okay.
So that's where people...
Yeah, so there hasn't been suffering so much.
Exactly.
The suffering that we
and when the cows stop giving milk, they're not killed. I mean, our cow home is 3/4 cow old age home, and 25% dairy. You know, we've got a nursery, you've got cow babies, you've got the cow elders, and you've got a small percentage of them in the right age group who happen to be giving milk.
And the thought is that is what is more the standard throughout the country.
Well, it's certainly the tradition. Mm-hmm. And I believe that it is still absolutely the standard in most places other than your big cities.
Okay. Well, that's really good to know and to understand. And
most of India is still tribal and village. Mm-hmm. I mean, people in villages are not bringing in milk from Delhi's industrial farms. Mm-hmm. They're getting it from the local guy who's got a cow.
Right. I saw a milkman today on a scooter with all his big thing. He was doing buffalo milk, I was told.
Yeah, exactly. Most of it is buffalo milk.
Yeah, which is a new concept for me too. Well, if the cow is sacred, which I love, and I got here and I said, the first cow I saw, I was so excited. And I was like, wow, I'm here where the cows roam in the streets, and I've heard about it and seen pictures about it forever, and actually being in the presence of it is like so amazing. You just watch all the traffic go around them and everything, and it's fantastic. But as I started sharing about it, on social media and whatnot, I started getting a lot of comments from people about, well, they're on the street and they're eating garbage and they're eating plastic bags and that's killing them and they're not as respected. And one of the biggest concerns, and I know that it's not the Wash Alliance, which one of your organizations here is protecting the cows, is working with the cows?
Ganga Action Parivar and Divine Shakti Foundation,
okay.
Both of them are working.
Right, so you guys are aware, obviously, of this and working to improve the health and well-being of these street cows, right? But I also learned that India is the largest exporter of beef in the entire world. And a little bit of research that I've done on it, it seems that a lot of that is actually buffalo, which is being called beef. But still, India being the leading exporter of beef when the cow is sacred here, that's a paradox that I'm trying to also wrap my brain around. Do you have any insight on that?
My guess is that what you've got is a very common dichotomy, a split, a chasm between the sentiment of the culture and choices and decisions being made and policies being made by people in power that the vast majority of the masses have no idea about. I mean, I've lived here 20 years. I'm an ardent animal rights person. My friends used to call me a vegetarianist. I had no idea about that. So my guess is that what you've got is a few people sitting somewhere granting permission for something like this to happen. Certainly have people who don't necessarily think the cow is holy. I mean, that's a Hindu thing. India is not only Hindu. Who are more than happy to have a business.
Yeah, it's big money.
It's great money. Mm-hmm. And India's got certainly a lot of buffaloes, a lot of cows. Mm-hmm. You don't need to pay for land on which to graze them because, as you mentioned, they roam the streets. So you can actually do that more cheaply than you could in other parts of the world. Mm. So it saddens me, and it also surprises me to know that. And I attribute it to a divide, a chasm, as I said, between the ideals of most people and the decisions being made by a few in power, whether it's political power, whether it's economic power, about which the vast majority of the population have no idea. Mm. Now, in terms of how the cows are treated, this is really sad, but it also brings us back to a similar dichotomy. We had a situation several years ago in our first attempt to get all the cows off the street, and we had gotten a piece of land just downriver, really close walking distance from here. where we were going to keep them, and we had a big official inauguration with the local people and the local administrators and whatnot. And then with the help of the local administrator, we rounded up all the cows from the street and put them there. And hundreds of women from the nearby villages came and dragged this local administrator out of his office and beat him in the street.
Oh my God.
How dare you? Who do you think you are? These cows should be free. How dare you lock them up?
You're creating a sanctuary and they're seeing it as a prison.
Right. Whoa. So that was when we realized, oh, I guess there's another side to this issue. You never would have imagined it, that anybody who loved cows would be against you taking them off the street and putting them into a safe place. But there it is. You are restricting their freedom.
Wow.
The cow is the goddess. Like, who are you to lock her up? Who are you to tell her where she can roam and can't roam?
That is really surprising.
Who are you to put a fence around her? So...
Okay, well that explains it. That explains it. It's not logical.
We're still doing it, and there's a lot fewer cows than there used to be, and we've got a big piece of land in another area that's not something that so many local people have to walk by. And it's beautiful, and it's grassy, and they get taken care of, and we feed them, and if they're sick, we have someone treat them, and it's a beautiful sanctuary. It's a beautiful way to live. But it's not something that everyone's in favor of, sadly. What you have to realize about India, and it goes back to this question and the one just before it, is when you have a huge percentage of the population uneducated, there's certain things that we would call common sense. But that common sense tends to be a product of the way in which we were educated or cultured. Whereas when you don't have that education, what tends to impact how people think is public opinion, public pressure. You get a lot more sort of mob mentality. Oh, the leader says this. If I haven't spent years in school learning to do critical thinking and have debates and argue this side and argue that side, I'm going to be much more easily swayed by you. Mm-hmm. And this is where you get a lot of that type of mob mentality in this country. And so I'm not sure that if you took every one of those hundreds of women and isolated them individually and said, now tell me exactly what it is that you're against, exactly what is your problem here, exactly why do you think the cows should be on the street, that any percentage of them could actually articulate what they believed. But there was a movement, there was a mob, it was somebody said, come, we're going to show them, and everybody followed.
Wow, okay, well, I'll hold space for that to evolve to a place that gives the cows a better life. Yeah, maybe it just needs to work through, and there needs to be some education or some more communication.
Well, and that's what we've really been doing, is helping people understand that the cows actually are getting sick.
Yeah.
That from the plastic bags, the cows are actually getting sick. And we're working for the cows. We've also worked to get plastic outlawed. So on both levels. Well, okay, if they're going to keep roaming the streets, at least let's get the plastic off the streets.
Right, great. Yeah, coming at it from both directions. That's great. All right, so I know that you teach meditation. Meditation is one of the tools that I really want to encourage people to utilize. This is another one of the broad questions, I guess. What is the value of a meditation practice for people? And I guess that's pretty well known. Maybe more importantly, just in our limited time, what advice can you offer to people who, have a desire, maybe starting on this path, maybe struggling with having a practice? Are there any simple practical tools or advice that you would offer someone going in this direction?
There's no wrong way to meditate other than not meditating. A lot of us, particularly from the West, particularly those of us who are over-educated and over-indoctrinated into the belief that there's always a better way to be doing something, a right way to do it, a wrong way to do it, a better way, a less good way, tend to get stuck when it comes to meditation. Am I doing the best way? Is this the best technique? Is there a faster way to do it? And it reminds me of that great parable of the disciple who goes to the Guru and says, Guru, I want enlightenment, I'll study under you, and how long will it take me? And the Guru says, a year. And the disciple says, a year? That's too long. I'm gonna try twice as hard. I'm gonna work twice as hard. How fast can I do it? How long will that take me then? And the Guru said, 5 years.
You're trying too hard.
Exactly. So the same pertains to meditation. The only wrong way to do it is to be constantly judging how I'm doing it. Because you can't be meditating and judging your meditation at the same time. Mm-hmm. You can't be thinking about your meditation and meditating at the same time. Because what meditation does is it removes that I'm thinking aboutness. And it connects us. There's a reason that in the 8 limbs that Patanjali gave, dhyan, or meditation, is the one right before samadhi. It's that which leads into the experience of samadhi because it's that experience of oneness. So I'm not thinking about divinity or thinking about my soul or thinking about my mantra or thinking about my breath or thinking about Krishna or Christ or whomever I'm meditating on. I'm merging with them, merging my awareness into that, whether it's my own breath, whether it's a candle flame, whether it's an image of the divine, whether it's a mantra. I'm not thinking about my mantra. I'm becoming the mantra. Meditation is an undoing much more than a doing. It's an undoing of that which is not self. A removal from our awareness of that which is not self so that we can sit in the experience of the self. So again, trying too hard is the only way not to meditate. But whatever it is that brings us into that experience, that place that takes us from an experience of separateness to an experience of oneness.
Yeah, I wish we had an hour to talk about meditation. That's great. Thank you. I really appreciate your perspective on all of these things. Climate change. I know that you've been doing some work with the UN and you've spoken at the UN regarding climate change. I haven't heard any of your speaking there, so I'm not sure how exactly you're presenting what you're sharing. I'm wondering if does food fit into that? Is food a part of that conversation that you're having with them, and how our food choices affect climate change?
Unfortunately, not yet. It would be a conversation I would love to have with them. It is a conversation that is crucially required. Interestingly, the UN actually isn't the body that needs the conversation. They know it. The United Nations released a report in 1996 called Livestock's Long Shadow.
Yes.
That spoke about how the livestock industry was the single greatest contributor to what they were calling at the time the greenhouse effect.
Right.
Now it's climate change, but at the time it was the greenhouse effect. So they actually know that. And yet, because the meat and dairy industry has a lobby that is so powerful, although you can Google that report and find it online easily, it was never publicized in any sort of big, meaningful way. Very few people have ever even heard of it or know that it exists. It's very, very sad, and it's certainly something that I am hopeful to be able to bring around. The dilemma is, whatever venue you're in, whatever platform you're on, is that in general, people don't want to change their lives.
Right.
People would love to institute a policy at a higher level or talk about distribution channels with regard to hunger. Because of course, whether you're looking at climate change or whether you're looking at world hunger or whether you're looking at water issues or energy issues, whatever it is.
Rainforest destruction.
Exactly.
Yeah, all of these things are connected to our food choice and eating animals.
Very, very directly and very, very severely, you can say.
Yes.
And yet, people on every platform absolutely just contract. You can almost see it happen in their bodies when you mention that actually this conference on hunger or this conference on climate change really isn't complete unless we talk about food choices. And so it's something that really needs to be taken up in a much, much bigger way. I'm very committed to it. There isn't yet a platform in which that sort of intervention or action by any body or group that I am part of, that would be able to be something they would adopt, sadly.
Right.
Simply because it's made up of people who aren't vegetarians.
Right. Yeah.
And so this is a day job. I'm committed to it. I love it. I want to be with the UN. I want to help the world. But then I want to go home and have the freedom to eat what I want to eat and live the way that I want to live. And how dare you get into my personal life? And the issue with vegetarianism is it requires you to allow your work, your policy decisions to get into your life. And very sadly, very, very, very few people are prepared for that. I almost feel like the only way for that to happen is for a stream of conscious people pushing for this to get big and powerful enough that we can bring them into this conversation rather than expect the people who are already having the conversation to suddenly adopt a policy or a platform or a suggestion that they're not even ready to do in their own lives, let alone go on TV or stand on a stage and advocate for it.
Right.
Because of course nobody wants to feel like a hypocrite. So you could get people to say something, but when it's something as clear as what you eat, you can't go on a stage and say everybody should be a vegetarian and then go out for a steak dinner with the people you shared the stage with.
Right, right.
So very sadly, I don't think we're yet at a place where the people who make decisions are prepared to allow that decision to impact their own lives. And I just hope that we shift and get to a place where they are ready to make a decision for their own lives, where they realize what I'm doing in my life has the ability, not just the decisions I'm making at the table in the office, but the decisions I'm making in my breakfast before I come and in my lunch and in my dinner when I go home.
Right.
That are impacting the planet, perhaps in an even more significant way than the work that I'm doing sitting around a table, or that I'm doing sitting in the General Assembly Hall.
Right.
And I hope that they make that shift before it's too late.
Yeah, it's great to have this conversation with you, and I'm grateful that you have this perspective and that you understand this, and you have a pretty big megaphone out there in the world, and I'm so grateful that you're sharing this message when and where you can. They say that they, as we've been talking about in satsang, who is they? But it has been said that there was a quote, I think it was Margaret Mead, that said it's easier to get a man to change his religion than his diet. There's so much conditioning about we need animal products, for our health and well-being, and there's so much disconnection.
Well, and food is love. Food is nourishment and nurturing. It's really the very core of who I am.
Yeah. So it is a big shift, but it's so needed, because as I see it, and this is why I'm so passionate about teaching people about this, one of the hashtags I like to use on social media is make the connection. The solution is on your plate is another one, because this one choice, hamburger versus hemp burger, it's like kill the world, save the world. I mean, it's so simple, and there's so much amazing, delicious food that we can enjoy, and people just need to learn how, and that's my work in the world. And I'm so grateful for your time and your perspective and all of this. And I know you have 1,000 other places to be right now, and you've been so gracious with your time. So I'm going to let you go. Although, if I could ask you one more final question, because I do ask everyone, and it's kind of a big one, but let me just lay it out. What's your wish for the world?
My wish for the world is that everyone could have the experience of their own wholeness and completeness, so that they didn't require other people to act in a certain way, or speak in a certain way, or do things in a certain way in order for them to feel happy. Most of us go around miserable because of what someone else said or did. But also because if I were living from a place of my own wholeness and completeness, I wouldn't need a steak to feel nourished and nurtured. I wouldn't need to have leather car seats on my car to feel worthy and good about myself, or leather handbags or leather shoes in order to feel stylish and happy about how I look when I look at myself in a mirror. I wouldn't need to have shopping therapy and consume and consume and consume and consume, the consumption of which is what creates the place into which things like sweatshops come in. If there weren't such a demand to consume, we wouldn't have the need for sweatshops. People wouldn't be allowed to produce items like that. And so that I could live consciously, using what I need, but making conscious decisions, so that I could make decisions based on what was organic, what was fair trade, all of those things that my brain knows it should be doing, but my heart says, oh my God, but I need to wear that because the model who wore it on TV looked so beautiful, and I really wish I were that beautiful, and my unconscious mind is telling me that if I wear it, I'm going to look like the model. So if I didn't have that unconscious conversation going on, that there were no place in me for that advertising to come that says, oh yeah, feeling less than today? Use this shampoo, buy that sweater, go here, do that. Then I'd be able to make decisions and choices about what to purchase, what to eat, how to live consciously. And that, of course, would enable the rest of our planet to live at all. So it would make those who are making choices live lives that are not only more conscious, but much happier, much more peaceful. I mean, nobody likes being a slave of the chocolate cake they have to eat in order to get over the stressful day at work, or the money they have to spend shopping at the mall in order to feel good about themselves. Nobody likes that.
Yeah.
We do it because we have to, because I don't know another way to feel okay. So it would help those, and of course it would help the rest of the planet by freeing up all of the resources so that we didn't need to have starving people, and we didn't need to have people working in sweatshops, and we didn't need to destroy our environment in order to fill the really quote-unquote needs of those who have the luxury to make choices.
Thank you so much. What a beautiful answer. Thank you again for your time. So grateful. I'm grateful for your teachings. Yeah, and your songs, as I told you the other day, I mean, they've been really hitting me so deeply in my heart, and you have so much wisdom and so much grace, and I'm your new biggest fan. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Today's episode is brought to you by the Conscious Eating 101 e-course. This is a 6-week online course aimed at empowering you to make food choices that are in alignment with your values. The program is based on ahimsa, also known as non-harm, and helps you make every bite that you take an expression of love, self-love, animal love, and planet love. The course offers 15 lessons and 20 nutritious and delicious recipes, and is offered over 6 weeks that you can do at your own pace. It includes lessons like plant-based nutrition, protein, dairy alternatives, the story on sugar, GMOs, label reading, and many more. If you're looking to increase your health and happiness, balance your weight, reduce your footprint on the planet, and align your food choices with your values, or are interested in being part of the solution to huge world problems like climate change, rainforest destruction, and world hunger, then this is the course for you. If this speaks to you, please check out consciouseating101.com today. Thanks so much for answering the call to be here today. I'm so glad you're part of our tribe of activated rainbow warriors. If you found the show in any way empowering or inspiring, I would be so grateful if you would share the show on social media or with friends and family that you think would benefit from these conversations. And also, rate and review the show in iTunes. This is really the very best way to help support the show and help us get noticed by others who are looking for the sort of content that we're sharing. Now notice there are no outside ads playing here. That's because the show is supported by you, the listener. You can become a patron of the show with a small monthly donation by checking out the perks on our Patreon page at patreon.com/visionary lifestyle and signing up there. There's also a one-time donation button on the podcast page of the website if that suits you better. And just so you know, your donations help to cover the necessary out-of-pocket monthly expenses to produce the show, and will also help us grow so we can inspire and educate even more people. And hey tribe, I'd love to hear from you. Visit me at visionary-lifestyle.com and please tell me your comments and questions. I really look forward to connecting with you. I love you. Namaste.